Hello, Motorado World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP Misano 2 with myself, Rob Portman, and Paul Scott, as usual, joining me. Paul, looks like the UK and South Africa have swapped weather conditions. We always start off by talking about the weather, but I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw some of those pictures posted on Facebook with this. It looked photoshopped. This just snow everywhere in South Africa.
Yeah, Rob, please don't tell me you're one of those oaks who believes everything on Facebook, eh? That was all BS, eh? There was no snow. The weather's been perfect. It's sunny. It's warm. No, just kidding. Yeah, it was hectic, eh? I mean, unbelievable. I know someone who was stuck in that snow literally for 21 hours. And I mean, we're not geared up for that. When the weather warning said snow, the oaks were like, yeah, end of September, you must be kidding. But it was hectic. But anyway, the weather seems to have turned for the better now, and it's today was very pleasant. But this past weekend was, yes, proper winter again for us, eh? And your side, good.
My side, good. Just lots and lots of rain. Definitely won't have any kind of water shortages here. So, but yeah, it's getting darker now. Earlier, darker later in the morning. So, our sunny spell is definitely, unfortunately, over for now. So, it's time to gear up for what is coming, and I know exactly what's coming. So, I'd rather not talk about it. Brian Ritchie's already tuned in, asking about Darryn Binder. He says Darryn Binder Speed Week are carrying on with the story of Darryn Binder joining Cressini. Brian, thank you for that. We'll definitely talk about that. Just now, Daryl Holmes, Hans Vieira. Hans is also saying hello to James Dent. James Dent is saying hello to Hans. James Dent, welcome. Sorry I didn't phone you back yesterday. I'll definitely give you a call sometime soon. I was driving in Hurricane Prince Harry yesterday, so I couldn't answer your call. Sean and Ronnie, good. Sean and Ronnie, how are you doing? Rogue Hutchinson, Van A. Rasmus, Ivan Plisic, Paul Kruger. Paul, how you doing? Marcian, El Camino. How is your holiday so far, guys? Rogue Hutchinson, whose holiday? What's that? Nicole Briet, always joining us. Richard Walker, Superplower Racing ZA, Deep Sea Diver Smith, Mike Teal, and his grandson Liam joining us. Liam wants to know where was Daz's crew. Nobody was encouraging him, and you could see how frustrated he was. Yeah, we'll touch upon Daz in just a second. Mike and Liam, don't worry about that. David Callahan, Conor Russell, Jason Harrington, Brett Lawson, Rian Petit, Paul Pacheco, the mayor of Portugal, and WCW Carlo 777. How's it from Italy? So thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us.
buongiorno.
Yeah, buongiorno. Just a big celebration of Heritage Day back in South Africa. So just happy Heritage Day to everyone. And then it's not nice starting on this, but it's not nice ending it either way. So just get it out of the way. Big condolences to Luca Salvadori, who unfortunately lost his life in the road racing accident in Germany somewhere. He was a big personality, big member of the Ducati family. He was a big YouTube sensation, a top racer as well, did a bit of World Superbike racing, Italian Superbike champion, and just a very big loss to the world racing community.
Yeah, condolences to him and his family.
Yeah, it is. It's a big sad loss, and he touched a lot of people's lives. I know certainly in the MotoGP and World Superbike paddock. And I've seen a bit of his YouTube stuff before, and sadly now that he passed, watched a couple of the videos, and he really was a big member of the motorcycling world. So it is a sad loss there. Evening, guys, from Winkelspruit. Renee, Dave Solomon, JP Sweek. How's it, gents? And yeah, definitely remember Daz having that FYP face of disappointment at the point of the weekend. Feel for the man. Rogue Hutchinson, what is the plan for Brad next year? Right. Let's dive straight into it then. We might as well start with Darryn Binder. And it was a frustrating weekend for Darryn. We were talking about Paul, the consistency, and that he strung together top 10 results, looking really good, looking like he found a bit of his mojo back. But having said that, we also spoke about there's definitely a disconnect between him and the team. When he came in and the team celebrated with him, you could see Darryn was almost hesitant, like, okay, guys, this is, where's this coming? So there definitely seems to be this little bit of a disconnect, and it kind of showed this weekend again. Qualifying very disappointing for Darryn again. We saw him kind of make up for it in 2 weeks ago race at the same track. Just didn't work out for him this time, and for sure that relationship has ended. We know they're not going forward with that. In some ways that shows but there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because from what we hear, inside sources and everything, is that a deal has been done for Darryn to stay in Moto2, and it could be and should be announced this weekend. So let's hope that happens.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic news for him. Yeah, definitely. Whoever made the remark about that FYP face, well, if you saw him in the pits, and let's face it, if any MotoGP rider in any class smiles all the time, it's Darryn. You know, you always, no matter what, he always seems to be one of those happy-go-lucky guys with a smile on his face, regardless of what's going on. And he certainly, that was a face of thunder. And reading the comments afterwards, he said he just, all of a sudden there was drop off on that rear tire. They were going to investigate. Was it setup? Was it, you know, which we're seeing from Pecco now, Dud Michelin. Okay, they're on Dunlop, so Pirelli. So I don't know. And I didn't read anything after that, but definitely they were going to, whether that's just the press side of things to say, yeah, we'll look at it, or I don't know if they do, but certainly not a great result. I mean, he got up to 13th at one point, and then he just dropped all of a sudden. The problem is, which doesn't matter now if what you're saying about a deal being done is correct, his teammate was good, eh? 7th place is, you know, he was solid, eh? So, but you know, it happens. It happens, and Darren's beaten his teammate, I think, the last 3 in a row. So it's actually irrelevant, but it's not, because the last result is the one that people are looking at. So a disappointing weekend for him. And I watched the qualifying on Friday afternoon and Saturday. And someone remarked, I think it's on the Darryn and Brad Binder Facebook page, the Binder brothers, maybe it's not more than anyone else, but they seem to spend a heck of a lot of time in the pits, as opposed, maybe it's not, I don't know. You know, just when someone mentions it, you suddenly think, yeah, but actually they might have a point here. I don't know, Rob. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, Carlo Williams just said, yeah, I watched and how much time basically Darryn spends in the pits compared to everyone else. And we know from the comments over the weekend as well, people get very frustrated with Brad. It was good to see Courtney. You know, it's always nice to see Courtney kind of come with a little bit of inside information that I don't even know or get. And she kind of explains it. You know, I've said it a couple of times. What happens in that ecosystem that is MotoGP, you know, we only get little bits of highlight reels of it. So what looks very frustrating on the outside to us, and is very frustrating, why is he sitting in the pits? Well, there's strategy to everything. There's spanners, excuse the pun, thrown into the works, you know. And in the case of Brad, we'll talk about it just now, but there were 1 or 2 technical problems that kind of hampered him. It does seem to be more of a theme for Darryn, though, I have noticed. And I think we see it a lot more because we're obviously focused mainly on our 2 SA boys. So we really have like under the microscope. So we really do take note of just how much time they are spending. And we've spoken about it before, Paul. There will always be a number 1 rider in a team and a number 2. Now, in Darren's case, and I'm not saying this is it by any means, Senna's signed for that team, Darryn hasn't. Senna's been the blue-eyed boy, Darryn hasn't. I'm not saying there's favoritism, but in a way I'm saying there is favoritism. Whether that's, you know, okay, there's dud tires. It happens. We've all experienced it in every single racing championship there is. Martin experienced it last year at Phillip Island. Pecco, from the word go now, you could see in that race, something wasn't quite right with Pecco. He was going to run away with it, but there was a lot of rear movement. So is it a Michelin tire? Is it set up? You don't know. But in the case of Darryn, in some ways, I could understand the team going, well, this guy's not going to be with us next year. You know, just give him the tires, just listen to what he has to say, give him 2 turns of this if he wants or whatever. But Senna is our boy. He's our future. So you can understand if the team were focusing more on that. And it brings me back to that same point that I mentioned earlier. There definitely seems to be a bit of a disconnect, like, right, just go ride the bike. Let's finish the end of the year. You're leaving. You know, let's just make the best of it. In terms of where Darren's going, a couple of people have asked. We know that RW Racing and potentially Cressini were the 2 big options. Honestly, I don't know. All I know is that a deal has been and will be announced soon, hopefully this weekend. For me, I'm hoping it's Cressini. As Brian Ritchie said, certainly in Speed Week, who are, you know, a German publication very close to with their ear on the ground to a lot of things, very rarely get it wrong. They're talking about Cressini as well. It's a straight swap between Manuel Gonzalez and Darryn. I'm really hoping it goes that way, because we've said it before. I think that more family environment, I think that nurturing style that is Cressini will fit Darryn's personality a bit better. Although having said that, Darryn and or South African kind of humor and Italians, that's never really been kind of tested or put in the mix before. But either way, I think it's going to be a tough rest of the year for Darryn because of that aspect of he's leaving the team and Senna's their blue-eyed boy. So I think we're going to have to just calm our expectations down a little bit, first of all, and our frustrations down, because I think there's going to be a lot of frustrating moments still ahead, and there's going to be a lot of good moments still ahead. I think there's still some good results in there, but I don't think we can expect too much given the situation.
Yeah, Rob, I agree 100% with what you're saying, but I'm going to go back to what I said last week about Aprilia, where we said if there is this lack of interest from Maverick and Aleix, I said specifically, but then it's up to the management to sort this out. Now, surely it's the same in Darryn's team, and I agree with you. Senna's there, let's call him their blue-eyed boy. But you've still got Darryn there who has shown that he's a better racer generally than Senna. Surely you want to put a little bit more input into him. You've got a company, Liqui Moly, who are throwing cash at this. Surely and I'm not saying for 1 second that's what they're doing, but it's human nature that you suddenly now, okay, he's leaving, as you say, that little bit of a disconnect will favor Senna. Just to me, management need to step in, whoever it is, and just say, guys, we've got 7 rounds left, 6 rounds left. Let's all put in 100%. It's going to benefit the team. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know. You know the team. I don't know any of the intricacies there. Are they that kind of team that, and take Cressini as an example, the MotoGP team seems to be a family where everyone seems to be okay with everyone else. I don't know if Darryn's team's like that, which could be part of a problem. Maybe his side of the garage are not getting what they need. I don't know. I just think that, this is a big money sport. And someone's paying a lot of money. All of this is sponsored. So someone else is paying for you to ride that bike in their colors. Surely you got to give 100% all the time. That's just my opinion. I think so it would be a bit of a disservice to Darryn if that, and I think you're spot on. I really do. But hopefully it's not that, and he just had a dud tire. Let's hope that's all it was.
Well, when I did speak to Darryn, the little bit I did get to speak to Darryn at the Silverstone GP, he definitely did express to me that there was that little bit of a disconnect. He wasn't getting what he wanted out of the team. I don't think there was a full understanding. There was something not quite right. And again, I've been watching a couple of documentaries lately, and I went back to the Dovizioso Ducati one, and Dovizioso and Ducati were flying high, and then all of a sudden just started to drop a bit. And Dovizioso goes on record at saying, one race meeting, the relationship that just flicked, that just started to drop. Gigi Dall'Igna was kind of saying, well, Dovi, you're not performing. Dovi was saying Ducati, and there was finger pointing. And once that happens in a team environment, it switches off. And a rider cannot perform at his best. And I think the frustration with Darryn that was clear for everyone to see on his face this weekend was, guys, I'm still fighting for my future in many ways, whether that deal was signed or not. Darryn's a purebred racer. They all are. And he's going, you know what? We've made the decision. As you said, that's fine. But I still want to compete. And I want you to help me compete. And I think there's a bit of frustration where Darryn feels like he's not getting that same competitive nature. And he's looking straight across the garage at Senna. And listen, both Darryn and Senna have a great relationship, really good relationship there from what I saw at Silverstone. But he's looking over the garage and potentially going, look how much support this guy's getting. Whatever. So I can understand how Darryn maybe just boiled up. Like you said, he's always a smiley character. This time he's going, you know what, guys? I've still got to fly to all these races. I've still got to put in the same amount of gym work. I've got sponsors to look after, Monster Energy, Montague Steel, and all these guys. But I need your help to make this happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out for Darryn. But let's hope that the announcement comes this weekend, and let's hope it's potentially with Cressini, because I think that'll be a good one.
Yeah, but regardless, Rob, he needs to find that one lap pace. We've said it many times. It wasn't just this weekend or just last weekend. It's probably been out of the 12 or 14 races, it's probably been 10 of them. Yeah. And I think, he's got the 25 lap race pace, but he has to somehow, and I don't know how, find that one lap pace to move him into Q2 so that he's not starting from 20 to 25th on the grid. Because as good as he is, it just makes your life so hard working through all those guys to get into, even if it is the top 10 or top 8.
Yeah, and let's see. The Darryn Binder one's a frustrating one. It has been a frustrating one for the last couple of years, but this could be the light at the end of the tunnel going to Cressini, where hopefully he'll just get more of a chance to shine. Some good news coming out of the weekend is, as Brian Ritchie mentions here, Ruche Moodley off to Bow Motorsports, and that's a great signing for Ruche, because Bow Motorsports, great team. They've got is it Munoz and Joel Calso. You see those yellow and blue bikes running up inside the top 10 more often than not. It's a great team. I think from the sounds of it, Ruche's got a good relationship with them somewhere in the paddock that they've formed. And it's just great that we're going to have Moto3 representation with Ruche Moodley, Moto2 with Darryn, and MotoGP for Brad Binder. So brilliant for South Africa, and a great chat about it today on Heritage Day. But I'm really excited for Ruche, the whole Moodley family, because they've put in the hard work. Ruche, I don't know if he's just got to stop walking under ladders or something. The talent's there. He's got this little bit of bad luck, and we've seen it with so many riders over their racing careers where this bad luck just follows them. I hope that just kind of falls away with him, and he can showcase himself in what is a really good team. I was pleased with that announcement, because I was so worried that sometimes you get left with the scraps, and there are some scraps there, but that's a really positive signing for us and for Ruche.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And moving up to Moto3 from Rookies Cup. Rookies Cup, no matter how you want to look at it, it's a desperation thing. Every guy, even if he's running in 33rd place, has to win, so they get that opportunity to move into Moto3. Now that he's made that step up, I think the racing as argy-bargy and dive bomb Darryn as it is, I think it'll be more mature than the Rookies Cup. So absolutely fantastic news. Just my question is, do you have any idea if he signed a 1 year or a 2 year deal? I remember I saw them doing the paperwork, but they didn't say anything about that to what I could see.
Good question. I actually don't know. And to be honest, if I look at like Joel Calso's deal, that was a 1 year deal. So I don't know. We'll have to ask someone in the comments if anyone knows, if anyone from the Moodley stable are tuning into this. I know Rushan sometimes tunes in. If you can give us some inside information there, that'll be great. So yeah, I'll keep a lookout in the comments. But like you said, that could be a big point to take into consideration. Look, the nice thing is, as you said, the Red Bull Rookies Cup experience. We know what that does for all the riders. He's got a taste of most of the tracks with his European, this year competing in the European Moto3 Championship. All the signs are pointing to positive things for Ruche. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant for us as South Africans. It's brilliant for Ruche. And the nice thing is he's got Darryn and Brad there to kind of lend a helping hand when and if he needs them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fantastic.
Okay, before we get into the on-track action, Paul, let's talk a little bit about the off-track. A lot of people coming in here with this comment, as you see from Deep Sea Diver Smith. Big speculation that came into the weekend that I did not expect, and although we should have expected, because we've spoken about it a couple of times, when results aren't quite there, you've got to point to the manager and look at changing management. We've already seen KTM have a couple of their Italian guys that have come over from Ducati into the KTM stable kind of just say, listen, we're just homesick, we're missing Italy, we can't do this Matikoffen kind of living in Austria thing. We're out, we're heading back to Italy. And it looks like the big news from this weekend is that Guidotti is going to be the next casualty, if you like, whether it's KTM asking him to leave or being fired, or him saying, you know what, enough, I miss my Italian lifestyles. Italians want to be Italians. They want to live in Italy. They want to work for the Italian brands. And that's why you very rarely see them stray away. They don't have to. They've got Ducati, they've got their Aprilia, they've got their lifestyle. They love it. They love their pasta, they love their everything. They don't want to change that. I commend Guidotti for stepping out of his comfort zone, for making that move to Matikoffen or wherever he lived in Austria. But there is this element of homesickness. So whichever way that relationship has ended, whether it's KTM ending it or Guidotti, it looks like that relationship's coming to an end. Rumor is Guidotti could find himself at Honda. Puig has already said, we've spoken about it, that maybe it's time I go because the results aren't there, this. Guidotti to Honda, is that maybe the right move? But certainly putting up this big kind of newsworthy story that Guidotti's leaving, Pedrosa potentially taking his place. I was very surprised at that, because Pedrosa, you know, every time that I've kind of heard and spoken, or, you know, done interviews, being involved with interviews, he's kind of said that, you know, he doesn't miss the traveling and stuff. And I was like, well, now you're going to be a team manager, you're going to have to do all that traveling again. It since came out that he's not going to be at the forefront because of the having to travel to all the races, but potentially Aki Ayo stepping up from the Moto3 and Moto2 project to lead the MotoGP project. So a lot of information to process there, but we've spoken about it before. Sometimes when you get caught in a rut, which it seems like KTM are, you need to make some changes, and maybe that's the way they're going. Also, financially, we know KTM are kind of a question mark around that. So a big different picture is going to be painted for the 25 season.
And possibly with them having signed Pole as their second test rider, possibly the thinking was always, Danny, this is our thinking long term. Guidotti moving on, maybe that had already started 6 months ago, we don't know. And possibly they had already spoken to him and he said, okay, this is what I'm happy to do. I'm not doing the traveling story, but I'll run from, whether it's from Austria or from wherever, I don't know, but maybe he's going to be the link between Pole, Brad and Pedro next year, to Danny as the link, and then on to whether it's a Aki Ayo or whomever it might be. It could be a very good structural change. I think one thing you get with Danny Pedrosa is a very analytical, calm, level-headed, but fast guy who can say, okay, I'm agreeing with X, Y, and Z. And obviously, if the need arose, they could say to him, okay, Danny, just jump on the bike, do 5 laps, tell us what you think. Sure, I think if he takes on this role, that won't happen, but you've got that as an option. The next thing is Guidotti going to go to Honda? You know, we've discussed it many times, Pooch we think he could be the Lynn Jarvis of Honda. I don't know. But would that be going from the fire into the frying pan, from the frying pan into the fire? I don't know. To me, it would be a step in the wrong direction, but possibly he sees something there that he likes, if that is true. Time will tell. I mean, Honda have been changing everything, kind of what we've been saying about KTM. They've tried different aero, they try this, they try that, and at the end of the day, they finish in the exact same place. They might be 5 seconds closer to the front, but they're still the worst of the worst at the moment.
It's a tricky one. You know, as soon as I heard Pedrosa's team manager, I was like, man, I don't think Pedrosa's that team manager character. As you said, I like him in that link position. You know, the communication between riders and the manager, or the head technician, or. So it never really sat well with me. As soon as they said Aki Ayo, I could understand that, because he's done so well. He's the problem with that is, how do you replace an Aki in that development stage of the Moto3 and Moto2? You know, he's fed the Brad Binders, the Pedro Costas, all these stars to the MotoGP project. Unless they've got someone in mind to replace him in that role, you know, which is almost irreplaceable in many ways. It's a lot of thinking for KTM to do, because whoever takes on that role, it's a massive undertaking. First of all, because you've got 4 massive personalities next year: Brad, Pedro, Enea, Vinales. Vinales is going to be your biggest kind of headache. James Aki Ayo's got his son there. I don't know if he's this. I don't know if he's going to fit that role, but he could potentially, as James says. But yeah, there's a lot to go. You've got the KTM project, where it's going, what we're going to do, blah blah blah. You've got the rider management to take. It's a big undertaking, and you know, James and I have spent some time with Guidotti, and he's always been very accommodating to us. I know Brad and them have always spoken very highly about him. There's just been something that hasn't worked. When he first came in, there seemed to be this boom of positivity and forward trajectory that was going on. It does seem to have slowed down now, and KTM don't seem like the very patient bunch, and like, okay, well, we need change now, which in some ways is a good thing, in some ways a bad thing. I don't know. No kind of name springs to mind when I think of that role that'll really grab it by the scruff of the neck and take it forward. We spoke about Brivio with Trackhouse. He was a really good fit for Aprilia, but again, it's an Italian guy. He fit in well with that kind of project. The KTM one, I don't know. Do you need a headmaster kind of character to come in there and really be like this, which Akiayo in many ways is? Talking to some of the riders that I've spoken to, Brad included, where he takes no nonsense. He's all loving and cuddly to a point, but then he's no nonsense. We saw it last year with Pedro Acosta. He said, "I let him. Eventually, I came in and said, "Listen, Pedro, that's enough now. This stops. This is how you go." I don't know. It could be maybe Bjorn as team manager for KTM. Who's this? Richard Walker. Maybe Bjorn as team manager for KTM will be the coolest team in the paddock. Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna cut it, but yeah, it's a big one. It's a big decision for KTM to make, because they're at a tipping point at the moment where this balance point where it's either going to just fall off the edge and they almost start from scratch again, or they can find those steps that they need to. So a very big decision for them to make.
Yeah, definitely. And they've got to look at the bigger picture. Don't look at now, because as you've just said, Rob, they've got Maverick Vinales there next year. And he's definitely someone that needs, whether he needs a forceful manager or I don't know. We discussed it. Aprilia are falling flat because no one's taking control of Maverick Vinales. Whatever needs to be done. That's my opinion. Now you're going to have him there. I don't think Brad is a worry. I don't think Pedro's a worry. They're going to get on and do what they have to do. Bastianini, we're going to see, as we've discussed, he's always had the best. Brad hasn't always had the best. Pedro's the rookie sensation. He's getting used to everything. But one thing with Brad Binder, he will do what he has to do. He's not going to throw a wobbler. He's not going to rev the guts out of the bike. He's not going to jump off it. He's going to do what's best for him and the team. So you don't have to manage Brad. Yes, you do, but he doesn't have to be micromanaged.
Yes.
The converse is when you've got Maverick Vinales. Now, if we talk about Danny being the manager and Maverick, I can't see Danny having any influence on Maverick. In fact, I think the exact opposite could happen. So, yeah, it's a very difficult one. I understand. They know that. They'll be looking at that. Difficult one going forward. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I suppose they'll make those decisions by the end of this season, because obviously the day after the last race is the first test of the year, and most of the new guys will be on their KTMs, Aprilias, whatever it is. So by then they need to have these plans in place so they can already start getting ahead for next season. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
A couple of people just shouting out to Ruche Moodley and congratulating him on Ruche's signing. Ruche, if you are watching, as Nicole Briat says here, please let us know if it's a 1 or 2 year deal, which is pretty nice to know. Paul has asked a question. Dirk Kotsia says, I should take the job at KTM. Dirk, I would sort them all out. Let me tell you, I will sort them all out. No problem. 4 turns of preload, 12 clicks of compression, and that bike's sorted. I'm telling you, off you go. I'll check the squish, two new pistons and rings, and off we go. Paul, let's just, while we're on the KTM subject, let's talk about them. I said in the last show, I was quite excited by the fact that they're going back to the same track. I was excited to see who makes improvements, who doesn't, because you got that data. And, I saw it as a vital sign that, if you make improvements, cool. If you don't, you've really got to be scratching your head. In some ways, I was wrong, because I don't know how everyone else felt, how you felt, Paul, quickly before we get into the full discussion. This MotoGP lacked a bit of spice. I don't know. I didn't have the same kind of energy for it. It was like, I don't know. It just didn't have that same intensity. It's almost like we kind of knew, okay, it's going to be Pecco. We knew what was going to happen in many ways. So I don't know. It just didn't have the flavor the previous one did. It didn't grab me.
Yeah. If we go back to the COVID years when we ran back to back, we were just so excited. And I think the paddock was to have racing. The fact that there were no spectators was irrelevant. So those back to backs, everyone was enthusiastic about them. I feel the same, Rob. I think this was almost we're going back to that place again. A bit of almost like a bit of a grudge weekend where it was, and when they go to a different track, everything's different. You go eat in a different place. The paddock's in a different place. The circuit might be the opposite way around. Everything changes. Now they're going back and it's almost like plug and play, press go, and off we go. So
Okay.
I do feel that, and I think a lot of guys arrived there with the impression, with the weather being good, if it was, Pecco was just going to run away with it. So, we kind of already fighting for second, third, fourth. Maybe Martin in his head was, no, not a chance, but kind of felt that everyone else had that impression over the whole weekend. So, yeah, I do agree with you. Not the best racing, but actually the best race if you take the last lap into consideration. So, yeah, very good. I thought it was something a little bit different. Surprising that no lap records were broken, or did Pecco break the lap record? He did those two very fast laps, but generally the pace was quite a bit slower. So, to think they've had so much time, I don't know. So it just seemed like a bit of almost a dull weekend, and I don't think the spectator attendance was fantastic.
No, it wasn't, and you can understand why, because of the same kind of thing we're just saying. Well, been there, done that. It was Groundhog Day in many ways, and there was improvements, and again, what this weekend kind of highlighted is just how far ahead Ducati really are. Ducati were able to make bigger steps than everyone else. Yamaha and Fabio were probably the biggest gainers out of the whole weekend. Everyone else were kind of stalemates, and I'll talk about the notes that I got. Let's go back to KTM then, and I said it was going to be crucial to see. I was going to see it as a good yardstick to see exactly where they are. If they could improve and keep up with Ducati, then it's not so bad. If they couldn't, Brad did go faster lap time wise. He's qualifying despite a bad Friday with mishaps and bad luck, technical issues, and spending time in the pits and whatever the reasons. Brad did his typical thing. He recouped for Saturday, dug deep. I don't think the bike setup was anywhere near what he wanted or needed to really compete. Grabbed the bull by the horns, excuse the pun, and dragged that KTM to a second row grid spot once again, as we've seen him do before. But certainly didn't look comfortable in doing it. Certainly not as comfortable as the Ducatis. And then it was pretty much that same theme throughout the weekend. Sprint race got a fantastic start. Thought, right, here we go, and then just dropped like a fly. And we've seen it before, and we've spoken about it before, where this is just so uncharacteristic of Brad, conceding positions so quickly. And it wasn't a case of leaving the door wide open. Brad could leave the door open before. They still couldn't pass him because he was so late, so confident on the brakes, so confident in the front end of the KTM. That's just not there with Brad. You could just see it. It's just not there. And I think what he tried to do in the main race was he got a good start, and he knew he just had to be competitive in those first laps. Slightly pushed, maybe a little bit of a cold tire, whatever it was, and down he went. And I think that's the hesitation Brad's got with that KTM at the moment. As soon as he really does want to push, down he goes. And we can compare him to Pedro. Pedro had another fantastic weekend in showing a bit of speed, but the same frustration is there with Pedro now. As soon as he wants to push past this limit that KTM clearly has, whether it's the WP suspension, whether it's their beam chassis, whether it's the engine, whatever it is, there's a limit to that KTM. And as soon as you go a millimeter over it, you're down. There's no forgiveness. And again, Brad and Pedro are finding that out. And it's killing us at the moment, and it's killing the KTM vibe, in all honesty. And we are sitting here going, once again, because of our involvement with Brad, going, damn you, KTM, we hate you. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And that's the frustrating. And that's just the situation we're going to have to deal with for the rest of the season, and hopefully not next season. But with the shift that's going on, there's going to be an adjustment period. And I think there's going to be more frustrating days ahead than there are going to be the positives. We know Brad's going to dig deep. We know Brad's always going to give his 110%. We know there's going to be those results where Brad takes the KTM to the result rather than the other way around. But this weekend just highlighted again just how far back they are to get Ducati, and how hard they have to push to try and just stay in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said that, if it was last week, saying the week before last, when we come back here, KTM will have all that extra info. I also said, but so will Ducati. And it worked for Ducati. I mean, at one stage, there were 5 of them. I don't know if that's, that's not exactly how they qualified, because Brad was 4th. But, the Ducati riders seem like the lap times come much easier. because yes, Brad will put in an absolute belter and he's ragged, which is 99% of the time that's his style. But you look at the Ducati guys, yes, you can see on that one flying lap or two flying laps, Martin is the perfect example. He is 100% on the limit the whole lap, but the bike can handle it. Where as soon as Brad, and maybe not for qualifying, but in the race, as soon as Brad gets to that point where he needs to push 0.2 of a second faster to stay with the Ducati, whomever it is that's just in front of him, the bike just can't handle it, and down he goes. And we've seen, and up until not last season, so 2022, up until then, Brad had so few crashes, whether it was in qualifying or races, from the middle of last year till now. Well, it's almost 3 or 4 a weekend, which is so unlike him, which shows that there's a problem. If it's Marc Marquez, that's how he finds the limits. He did it on Honda. He's done it predominantly on the Ducati, maybe not finding the limits. Now he's making mistakes, which he rightfully says so. But Brad, it's not like Brad to crash as much as he does.
Paul, today again, I watched a little bit of the resurrection of Ducati. It's on the MotoGP YouTube channel. And I just like to flick, and every now and then I just like to watch his documentaries, as I've said time and time again. And I was watching it, and Ducati, we won the world title with Stoner. Everything's cool. And now, even in that documentary, they admitted, listen, Stoner won that title for us. That bike was unrideable. It had no balance. It was terrible. And that came to show the following couple of years with Stoner, who eventually said, you know what, I've had enough of this. You guys aren't finding the answer. I'm out of here. Okay, Ducati, the answer is a Valentino Rossi. Here we go. Problem solved. The guy took a Yamaha, he fixed it, he won them world titles. Here we go. Let's spend the money. Valentino Rossi is going to solve all of our problems. 2 seasons later, not even the mighty Rossi could fix the problem. So where I'm going with this is this Wayne Taylor comment here, which sums it up perfectly. Rob, I absolutely love Brad. He's why I watch MotoGP, but I'm starting to think that he can't get the bike to a consistent setting as a base. Does this team not maybe get clear feedback from him? Now, why I mention this is I do also sit there and I go, okay, Brad, you've been in MotoGP a long time. You've been on this KTM project a long time. Why can't we find this direction? Is it rider information? Is it team information? Blah, 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 blah. Then, as Wayne kind of brought that up, I tied into the Ducati documentary that I watched again, the Rossi. You can be the greatest rider in the world, the Rossi, the most technical, gifted guy he had Jeremy Burgess by his side. They could fix anything. If you put them in a lab with white cokes, they would find a cure for cancer. Okay. But no, they couldn't solve this Ducati. Why? Because Ducati just weren't there. Ducati just couldn't put their pieces of the pie together. They only did that, and they admitted once we got Gigi Dall'Igna in. And Gigi Dall'Igna, first thing he said is, it wasn't just me. I had to get the right staff, the right team, and we had to get the right foundation, and we had to get the right work ethic. And only once we had that, the way I wanted it to, then we could start going. So almost for the first 2 seasons of Gigi Dall'Igna, he was designing a bike, but he was also building the team to understand the way he wanted to work, the character and the philosophy and the way they wanted to. Same with the football team. The manager brings his own philosophy. He wants his own staff. Very much the same kind of building blocks. Now, is that where KTM are failing? I don't know, because Brad's at the same team. I'm talking members with him for a while, so they understand each other backwards. They bleed for each other. They die for. They win together. They lose together. They do everything together. But, and this is where we can go with the Pedrosa Connect, is something that they're doing in a MotoGP weekend, is some translation getting lost that's going back to the KTM factory. There's some kind of disconnect. Brian Ritchie, I think, also commented earlier, Brad and KTM certainly do seem to perform slightly better when Pit Byra's sitting there in the garage. He seems to be that headmaster. Unfortunately, he wasn't there this weekend. Condolences to him and his family, because his father passed away. But, little things like that. We've said it with VR46 Academy. When Rossi's in the pits, the performances are better, So I look at that Rossi and KTM Ducati situation, and I go, is it just a case that they're just not there? KTM are just not there, and it's almost a reset. and Ducati had to wait 15 years from Stoner's world title to Bagnaya's world title. Yeah, they were competitive in between that. Dovi finished second 3 times or whatever. They won races. Fine. But they had to wait all that time. Now, the frustrating part for KTM and Brad is they don't have the time. They do not have the time. They need results now. Brad's clock is ticking as a MotoGP rider, as a prime rider. KTM's clock is ticking in terms of we need results. We've got to prove our WP and our badge and whatever. Again, it's just what the answer is. I don't know. And I think surely they must be sitting there now going as well. We dragged Red Bull Formula One into this. We've spent millions. And we're not seeing, we're not seeing any results really. What's the next step?
Well, to be quite honest, Brad got a second in the first round of the championship this year. Since then, they've been pretty mediocre by MotoGP standards. They don't seem to have progressed at all. Are they progressing because Ducati are getting better, so they are actually moving forward? I'm not too sure. Rob, the points you make are so valid. We've discussed it numerous times. The points you make, and I've mentioned it many times, since Gigi got there, it's taken 10 years, say 8 years to when Pecco won his first championship. He built the team around him. The problem is no other team has that formula at the moment, and it's not just KTM. We want KTM to do well so Brad can do well. But we've got KTM, we've got Aprilia, we've got Honda, we've got Yamaha, all in exactly the same boat. They've had staff come and go, Honda specifically. Yamaha, I think, have taken a good step, in my opinion, for next year. But it just seems that everyone else is trying to make short-term gains to fix a problem now. Where Darryn in 2014 said, and I'm presuming this is what he went there with because they poached him from Aprilia, he went there and said, this is my game plan. We're going to achieve this by this time, then we're going to achieve this, and then we'll be able to win championships. Everyone else, by moving pawns within the team, and I'm specifically thinking of Honda, who we know between 2022 and now probably changed 2/3 of their staff, bar Alberto Puig. Are they trying to make short-term gains for now instead of looking at the long-term, build that team around your 2 best riders, your best manager, I don't know. It's such a difficult, I understand. They want results now. No one wants to wait until 2030 to start winning. They're in the championship this past weekend, next weekend, the weekend after. And, so I understand that. But Gigi definitely went there with possibly a more defined plan than anyone else. And, they're reaping the benefits. And everyone else is on the back foot. And now you know what it's like, Rob. As soon as you're in that predicament, you're trying to change everything all the time. And as we've discussed, are KTM going left, then right, then up, then down? We don't know, but that's what it seems like. And not just KTM. Aprilia, Honda, Yamaha, the same. So it's a very difficult one, but certainly Gigi's plan, whether it was a master stroke or just, I don't know, it's certainly he's moved the goalposts, not even a little bit. He's moved it on to the next field.
Well, just quickly, Ruche Moodley, thank you so much for the comment. Hey, guys, thanks for all the well wishes. It's a 1 to 1 year deal, option to renew if performance is good for both sides. Thanks for that information, Ruche. And yeah, best of luck to you. Definitely look forward to seeing you and the family in the paddock next year. Going back to your comment now, Paul, that you've just made, about Darryn. Darryn has definitely been the defying factor in all of this. He's taken Ducati and MotoGP to the next level, and watching that documentary as well, he had a defined plan. His first plan was, I want to work with Lorenzo. They made that happen. I think he got valuable information from Lorenzo. They ended that relationship too early in many ways. Tardozzi kind of outrightly admits it. Gigi Dall'Igna and them are a little bit more political, if you go by results and but they got information out of Lorenzo that Dall'Igna could work with. Dall'Igna then said, our plan was looking at the Moto2 riders that were coming, and we identified Pecco Bagnaia as our next Ducati champion. That was it. So they defined him, got Pecco, and look what happened. So that's worked out. So I think that having that plan in action is something that definitely sets them aside. but they're also the patience and the time to make it happen, which I don't think many others, Guidotti and others, have the luxury of. But here's a really good point that Robert Swart actually makes, and I know he's laugh out loud at the end of it. Is KTM really that bad, or is Ducati just that good? And that can apply to all of them. And in many ways, KTM aren't bad. It's not terrible. You know, it's tenths of a second that we're talking about. It's 4/10 a lap. You know, it's minute in the world of actual increments. It's minute. So are they really that bad, or is it just that Ducati are so good? I would just, you know, if I had to answer that question, it's purely and simply that Ducati are just that good.
100%. And Rob, I think what makes the Ducati so good is its rideability. For whatever reason, whatever they've got right, because you've got a Pecco Bagnaia who can ride it, and make no mistake, he is superb. He's top of the pops. You've got a Alex Marquez, as good as he is, he's a two-time world champion. He's not Pecco Bagnaia, he's not Marc Marquez, he's not Jorge Martin, but he can ride that bike. He's won sprint races on it. He's finished on the podium. And another example, probably the Gianantonio, from a nobody to where he is now. Would the Gianantonio be in the same situation had he got on a KTM? Had he got on an Aprilia? I don't believe so. So it's not that, yes, the bike is definitely better, but what makes it so good, and whatever it is, if it's the electronics that they work out better than everyone else, if it's the setup, but the bike is certainly more rideable and more rideable on the edge. So when they're at the limit, I mean, look at Bastianini. Most races, last 6 or 8 laps, he's the fastest guy on the track by miles. He's on a Ducati. Nobody else is saying, but yeah, at the end of the race, the KTM is better, or the Aprilia. So their bike is rideable, which is a big difference, because we know straight line speed, the KTM will probably give it a proper hiding, 3 or 4 Ks an hour faster. That's not what makes the MotoGP bike a MotoGP bike. To win, your bike has to perform everywhere. And Ducati have certainly got the rideability part right. 8 riders that almost at any time, maybe Morbidelli, not so much, but I joke when I say that, almost at any time, any one of the 8 riders could win or podium.
Now, Gary Kays has just asked the same question, kind of leading on to this. Could it not be that Ducati have an unfair advantage with 8 bikes? Gary, we've spoken about this time and time again. Yes, in many ways, but it's not Ducati's problem if they've created this amazing. It's not Coke's problem that they sell more than Pepsi because they have a better tasting product. It's, you can't, you know, the world's not fair in that way. You can't even it out like that. But what I will say is, and I'll kind of just, as you were talking, it kind of just came to me to put it in this way. At the moment, Ducati have got a kitchen with 8 ingredients to make a main dish. KTM, in all reality, have got 2 in the form of Brad and Pedro Acosta. Aprilia have got probably 1 at the moment in terms of Aleix Espargaro, because Raul, Miguel, and Maverick, to me, don't really add any kind of flavor to any dish. So you try and make a main course with 8 ingredients compared to 2, and of course you're going to get a better dish. And that's what's happening in the Ducati kitchen at the moment. What positive I do look forward to next year is that Ducati's ingredients is going from 8 to 6 next year. We know that because they've lost Pramac, which is a big loss for them. We're going to have to wait and see how that, if that is a big loss for them or if it's just business as usual. You know, they can create the same dish with the 6 ingredients as they were with 8. But the positive for me is that KTM are getting 3 real good ingredients. You know, the Maverick one could be a little spice added in now and then that could work. Aprilia are getting a solid 2, 3 in many ways with Ayagura, because it's fresh information, fresh ingredients that we've spoken about that can only be a good thing. Martin, which we'll talk about later, and Bezzecchi. So there's those positives to look at. Yes, it is not unfair. It's not unfair that Ducati have 8 bikes. They've worked at it. They've spent the money. Gigi's made the difference, and teams are buying the right to have those bikes. But going forward next year, it is exciting to see that Ducati are going down to 6, and the other teams are bettering themselves in terms of rider quality. So we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out against Ducati.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. The one argument to that would be, well, what about Honda? They've got 4 bikes and they're still at the back. So
I worry. Yeah, I worry about Honda because
yeah,
Luca Marini to me is still an asset in some ways. Um, yeah, I don't think they've got the riders to do it. Chantra, a little bit of a fresh ingredient.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not
Listen, when
a Stanini or a.
yeah, Rob, but when Quartararo moved up from Moto 2, a lot of people felt the same way. I'm not suggesting that he's going to be anywhere near as good, and he's not jumping on even a bike as good as the Yamaha. But yeah, let's see what happens. My next question, while we're not talking specifics about bike race, the weekend's race, what about the story that Yamaha are going to launch their V4 next year?
Mm.
To me, it doesn't make sense because that
Okay.
means they're only going to run it for one season. Next year's 2025, 2026. I can't see it happening. I can understand them getting it ready, which I've said many times, for the change in regulation 2027. I just don't know why they'd want to go and spend all that money developing a 1000cc unless they're doing something that allows them to chop off one cylinder. No, they're not going to do that. Reduce the ball, reduce the CC to 850, unless that's their thinking. I was just, and it seems like it's a done deal. Even Simon was talking about it,
Mm.
because everyone's asking for engine freezers for 2026 because they got to change to,
Yes.
is it fossil fuels or whatever it is? So they
Yes.
need to develop that. They're saying we can't develop engines and fueling at the same time. So I don't know. What's your point on this Yamaha story or your
Uh,
opinion?
yeah, I'm surprised that you're saying that, but now that you've put it in context like that, I've never really thought about it because I still keep forgetting about the 2027 rule change. To be honest, I focus, I'm very short-minded when it comes to that. I think they have to go that way. If you look at World Superbikes as well, I think that Big Bang
Yeah.
has run its course. It's very old tech. I raced the Big Bang, that's how old the Big Bang engine is, and I think it's the change they need to make to compete. Where the tough part for them is they have to develop an engine, a 1000cc engine, like you said, that's going to be adaptable to go the 850 or 800cc route that they're going in 2027. The same way that Ducati are. It can be done. I think it will be done. Whether, yeah, I don't know. I mean, are they ballsy enough to go, you know what, we'll write off 2025 and 2026 just to develop an 800 and race against thousands with a V4 800? I don't think they're that ballsy or that way inclined to do it. The Japanese, especially. Whether they've had this V4 brewing now for the last, things don't just happen overnight. They haven't just thought
Yeah.
about this V4 now. Whether
Yeah.
they've done 3-4 years of testing this thing and gone, right, now we're ready to launch it and be competitive straight out the bat. It's certainly interesting, but I definitely think it's the way they had to go. I think that Yamaha project, never mind just the engine, just the whole look, the identity, the DNA. It dates back to Rossi's days, and I
Yeah.
think they do need this Lynn Jarvis boot, this in many ways DNA boot, philosophy boot, and let's go fresh. Fabio Quartararo was saying that's what ultimately kept him. 12 million euros is what ultimately kept you. But
Yeah.
he's saying that they came to him with this business plan, and a V4 would have been included, and a Lynn Jarvis going would have been included. All these factors would have been included that would have, on top of the 12 million, enticed Fabio to go, you know what? I'm in. Yamaha's biggest problem for me is, and I've spoken about it before, Alex Rins. He's damaged goods. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he was sick this weekend again. But how reliable is the guy? And I love
Yeah.
Alex Rins. He's a fast rider, but how reliable is the guy to the project? How
Yeah.
a Brad, you can count on him week in, week out. You can now count on a Mark week in, week out. You can count on so many riders week in, week out. I can't say that about Alex Rins. So
Yeah.
that's their downfall for me.
Yeah.
And and,
Yeah.
and as Fabio said, they failed with their test program. Crutchlow was injured. Then this guy
Yeah.
comes in. Now Dovi's coming. Is he coming? They failed with their test project. Their test project has failed miserably. They've got to sort that out. First things first, before anything else happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think they had to go the V4 route, no doubt. I'm just unless, and I'm no mechanical engineer, they know that when they go to the 850, that all they need to do is, because I think it has to be the same bore, different stroke. They've already planned that, but they'll run the when I say the concept, run the V4 so they get all the technical gremlins out of the way in 2026. I'm not too sure. Let's see what happens. It'll be very interesting to see when that comes about. But definitely it's on the test bed. So it seems like it's not next year, definitely the year after.
Yeah, Davi Miller, Zarco all went backwards, leaving Ducati. Look, that Ducati definitely does, and this is my concern, which we'll talk about. Not my concern, but we'll talk about it just now with regards to Bezzecchi and Martin. They are going from their projects to another project. So we'll talk about that just now because there are more pressing subjects at hand before we get in there. Brad looks like he's fighting. Brett Lawson. Brad looks like he's fighting the KTM from one lap to another. He's out of shape. I don't want to say it's a hard watch because it's an entertaining watch, watching Brad, slide the bike and fight it and whatever. But you just look at it compared to what Pecco and Martin are doing their Ducati, and there's no ways you can compete riding you can't. No. It's impossible. No. You're not going to compete riding a motorcycle like that to Pecco and Martin, who look as smooth as silk. And that's why straight away, Bagnaia in the main race, after 2 laps, you could see, hang on. This is not the smooth, silky Pecco that we're used to. He's a sitting duck here in many ways. He brought it back at one stage, and I think that was his downfall. It was almost like a false sense of security. Those tires come back now. I'm feeling good. 30 lap time, bang on the deck. It was a very strange crash. I must say, Pecco very rarely gets it wrong like that. But we can speculate about that all day. Big talking point, Paul. It went viral again, very much like Pecco versus Alex Marquez at Aragon, is the last lap move from Enea on Martin. Now, again, everyone chime in with your comments, please. I'd love to hear it all. It definitely seems to be a little bit more clear-cut than the Alex versus Pecco, which was very split. This seems to be a bit more defiant in its conclusion. But I'd love to hear everyone's comments, including yours, Paul. I'm going to put my feed of it all out there. I commend Enea Bastianini for making that move because we've heard it from MotoGP riders and everyone that they've almost backed out of making last lap moves and told not to because of the steward's decisions and that they're afraid to make moves. Enea Bastianini had the balls, had the courage, had the bastard-like attitude to go, I don't care about Jorge Martin, the championship. It's about me. I'm going for it. And he went for it. And for me, he went for the classic, hard but fair racing move. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was brilliant. I think he should be applauded for anything else. Everyone else pulling it apart. Is it politics? It was an Italian rider on the 100th win for Ducati, an Italian company. So that's why the stewards overlooked it. And it was a beautiful move that deserved nothing but praise. That's what keeps me watching a race like that where there weren't many overtakes. It was boring in many ways in terms of race overtakes. It's never boring in terms of how precise and good those guys are and how fast they are for so long. That's what I look at when they're racing, when there's no moving and passing, and that I look at how the hell does Martin and Bastianini stay that precise and that fast for so long. You do yourself a favor and climb on the PlayStation game and you try and be that fast and that precise for 5 laps, never mind 20-something laps. So I commend Bastianini for doing that. Let me hear your comments before I dive even deeper to what I think about Martin after that.
Okay, so if you had a look, it was about 3 laps from the end. He definitely lined that move up. But then he backed out of it because on the onboard camera, he comes right alongside Martin, but then he backs out of it. So whether he thought, no, this is too close, maybe Martin turned in a little bit earlier at that specific time, or whether he was just lining it up for a last lap dive. Then one thing I read, so I thought it was fantastic. The move was fair. It was hard. There was contact, so blah, blah, not allowed to do that. The criticism is that the stewards are making, and Freddie Spencer is the guy, are making different assessments at different times, which is what a guy like Aleix Espargaro was moaning about. And I understand Aleix is Martin's big China, so he's going to side with him. But what he's saying is that, and he didn't mention anything. He just said, one day we're not allowed to have any contact. The next day, on the last lap, you're allowed to barge him out of the way. He didn't barge him. He just put a hard move on him, and it doesn't even get investigated. So I understand the riders. He was saying, oh, well, now it's free fall. But one thing I read, which I don't know if it's Bastianini said nothing, but somebody said on one of the social media things that when they ran off the track, if the track is painted green
Yes.
and Bastianini had gone into the green as well, he would have had to drop one place. But that was where the long lap penalty gets served. So there's no green paint there. Whether that was purely coincidental or not, I have absolutely no idea. But certainly, he it's his home race. He's a racer. He's there to win. He saw the door was open by 0.5 millimeter. He took the gap. I think in his head he thought, well, I'll serve whatever penalty I get, but I'm going to cross the finish line first. My thinking after that happened was what an error Martin made by backing off. Because what if Bastianini had got a 5-second penalty? He rolled off so much because Mark was 8 seconds behind. So Mark was never if there'd been a 5-second penalty, Bastianini would have won anyway. So I think that was and I understand Martin's frustration, but I think being the last lap, it was a very immature move by him. Could have backfired on him, because then if the stewards had said, okay, we're looking at it, you can't do that on the last lap, we can't give you a long lap penalty, it's the end of the race, we'll give you a 5-second penalty, he would have still won the race. So, I think Martin, in hindsight, might have said to himself, I got away with this. He still finished second. But if there was a penalty, would have still been second. So I think a little bit of a silly thing by him. But, that's racing, Rob. That's what we want to see. But we also don't want to see where now guys are taking it into their own hands and just punting guys out of the way willy-nilly, because then someone could get hurt. So, but I think it was, proper racing move. 1998, Kevin Schwantz, Wayne Rainey, Mick Doohan, Gardner Lawson type of racing where, that's how it is. And big ups to Martin, as cross as he was. After he crossed the finish line, he went to Bastianini and shook his hand or gave him a high five. So, I just think he made a big error in judgment after it had happened.
Okay, before I elaborate on that even anymore, I just want to answer this question here from James. Robert, I was under the impression that all the Japanese manufacturers were not making 1000cc bikes anymore. Yamaha just launched a new spec R1, R1M, and Honda a new 5-led SP to elaborate. So James, they have to, in terms of homologation for World Superbikes, produce X amount of bikes. But what they're also doing, Yamaha, for the European market, is not releasing the new updated R1 and R1M street legal bike, which just has wings and updated brakes and stuff. But they're doing this more, less is more. So they're building these track ready R1 spec bikes, and they're selling them for more of a profit margin. So we're producing less, but we're making more profit because we're selling them for more of a profit margin. But in terms of, they've got to keep manufacturing them purely for homologation reasons to race them, not only World Superbikes, in various championships around the world. So, Italian championship, you've got to produce a production bike of X amount, German championship, all those championships. So they've got to still produce them if they want to keep racing. Ashley Twig, Anaya, double long lap penalty. So Ansley, I don't agree with that, but you're entitled to that. I can understand why people think that. But and exactly what you said, Paul, it's almost the stewards' fault, because they set that precedent all those years ago. They have become 100 million times better over the last season and a half. You hardly actually forget there's stewards involved when they go, it's being investigated. Oh, geez, okay. At one stage, it was every lap of every race. It just, we were up in arms. The riders were up in arms. We were screaming about it. But there was a decision made by all the riders. All the riders get together. A decision was clearly made where, listen, stewards, back off a bit, let us race. And that's where I don't understand, where I can understand Alicia Spargo saying, oh, it's different strokes for different folks. But you guys all sat in a meeting and came, you all know the rules. You all came up with this thing. So, and why are we complaining? The racing is better. That's what's going to bring the crowds. Don't whine about it. So, Ansley, I understand what you're saying is that a year and a half, 2 years ago, yes, double long lap penalty all day long. That move was a double for sure. The stewards would have probably put him in jail for that move. But not currently. And Simon Crayfall, who's taking that role, said it perfectly. No ways. And I answered someone on Facebook, not an argument, got into a discussion about it. And I said, right, if we penalize Enea Bastianini for that move, you have then got to take all Rossi's titles away from him, all Bastianini's Mark Marquez's titles away from him, and you've got a can Moto3 as of today. because in Moto3 that happens on a lap basis, every lap basis. Danny Holgado this past weekend did that every single corner, just about. He was barging guys out there, and we commend them in Moto3 for it. We think Moto3 is the greatest racing in the world when they do that. Rossi was the greatest. We all, when Rossi put Gibana into another postcode, oh no, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. When Marquez booted Lorenzo off, oh, nothing wrong with it. When Rossi, the Stoner move, oh, nothing wrong with it. Now all of a sudden we're going, oh no, that's not fair. Come on. We put these people on pedestals. They won championships because of moves like that. You were talking Schwantz, right? Schwantz went on record at saying, if I didn't pull those kind of moves, I'd never beat the guy, because Yamaha was so superior over the Suzuki back in those days. So let them race. I'm not going to watch a last lap. Imagine that last lap starting and go, okay, well, that's it. So what's the point of a last lap then? Because then every lap's the last lap if you can't overtake. So it's like, well, whoever holds shots in has won the race because you can't overtake. No. Yeah. So the out of track loser position, Dirk Gutser says here, but as you said, Miguel Oliveira was the rider that said in his press conference, Bastianini was so clever. The rule is if you go onto the green in the last lap, you've got to give up a position. There was no green there because it was a long lap penalty. So according to the rules, and they didn't break the rules. Edwin Norris racing incident, or Paul Kruger, all I can say is that Brad would have been penalized for that move. Wayne Taylor, arm with the beast, was hard but necessary, good for racing. We've also got to take into account the nature of the track, the nature of where MotoGP is at the moment. These guys are so fast. Every single corner, I can't remember who said it, if it was in one of our interviews or if it was an interview I did with Simon Crayford, or someone said, but these guys are so fast and they're almost on an identical pace. This clean passing is almost, it's not going to happen anymore. You can't.
Not going to happen. Yeah, you can't.
Martin was going so fast. The only way Bastianini could pass him was if he put that kind of move on. And was it dirty? Me, it's racing.
Yeah.
He's got to in many ways make a line because Martin is so fast, and Martin's biggest problem was that he didn't close the line enough. He was doing it perfectly in turn 14, where he got the dashboard message saying, right, turn 14, protect with your life. Okay, well, what about turn 4? Or whatever it is, turn 4.
Yeah.
You should have done the same there, and then it wouldn't have happened. And Bastianini caught on to that. Whether he knew the long lap penalty and the green paint, I don't know. But like you said, he lined that up. He knew exactly where he wanted to do it and how he was going to do it. He still even looked back, the courtesy of checking it there. But my biggest argument is exactly what you just said, Martin's reaction to it. Instead of trying to recover as quickly as possible, he was too busy waving his arms and feel sympathy for me. Brad would never have done that. If Brad would have got back onto the track and gone as hard as he would have chased him. I'm coming for you.
Yeah,
Martin was too busy throwing his hands up, going, "Oh, poor is me, woe is me." And I didn't like his reaction, which I'm sure he would get fined of afterwards. But again, I liked his reaction after that. After that, as angry as he was, he went to Bastianini and went like this, still put out his hand, shook it. In the comments afterwards, still when he did that, he said, "Oh, that was for you, ha." And he kind of came back down to earth because he realized what had happened. And let me, again, from the documentary I watched earlier today, I made a note of it. Never really knew it was there. It just popped in my face. Martin, now the victim here, Jorge Martin. In that documentary, there can only be one, which was 2 years ago, in the championship, the second year that Pecco won his title. It was between him and Martin at the final race at Valencia. Martin goes on record as saying, "I'm going to dive bomb him and I'm going to push him wide. I'm going to do that to Pecco because I'm going to fluster him. I'm going to put a dirty move on him and I'm going to push him wide." It's racing. That's what needs to be done. And this is what happens. So I'm looking at this going, and it just, as I watched it, I went, hang on. But this is the guy that's just complaining about having a hard mood put on him. These guys are thoroughbred hunters. And if you take that killer instinct away from them and the killer attitude away from them, we're going to have the most boring racing ever. So right decision was made. Well done, Anaya. Unlucky, Martin. Well done for the way you recovered from it, but it shouldn't go any further than that.
Yeah. Rob, and just one thing to highlight, which I'm sure everybody sees, but I mean, the race is give or take 40 minutes long. Yeah. For 40 minutes, They are on the edge. Doesn't matter whether you're on the Ducati or the Honda at the back, you're on the edge. And those two guys, I don't think, besides once Bastianini had pushed him wide, I don't think they were ever more than 3/10 apart. So say it was half a second. Take a stopwatch and try switch it on and off in half a second. That's the difference. For 40 minutes, and at places they're doing 300 k's an hour. And then you're wondering why the margin is so close. You got to pull a move like that to gain one bike length. Because ultimately that's all he wanted, was to be ahead of him by one bike length. So listen, these guys are, their skill level there is just next level. And for anyone on the show who's never seen MotoGP live, you just cannot comprehend how fast these guys are. You can't. You know, when that thing comes past you at 320 k's an hour, it is mind-blowing. And as I say, they race for 40 minutes and the gap is 3 or 4 tenths of a second, not per lap. That's where it stays for 40 minutes. I watched a bit of the Formula One on the weekend, and after 6 laps, first to second was 8 seconds. And they say the Oak's under pressure. You know, he's under pressure not to hit the wall because they're racing on a street circuit. But MotoGP, you blink twice when you should have blinked once, and 3 Oaks will go past you. So yeah, that, you know, it's easy for us to sit here and say double long lap penalty, or it was a hard move. Or, you know, they all want to win. They're on the limit, and the margin of being better is not like it was 15 years ago, where first and second were probably 10 seconds ahead or 8. You know, if you have a look how the gaps have got closer and closer, the top 10 generally aren't covered by 10 or 12 seconds after 40 minutes of racing.
Yeah. Good comment here from Wayne Taylor. I can see why Martin doesn't have fans. We spoke about it in the last show. He's petulant and getting tired of him telling us that he's the best and fastest, like he's always trying to justify himself. And it is. You know, I watched those documentaries again, and I looked like this. He was handed an ace card in many ways because, you know, Pecco crashing out, and he's kind of recovered those points he lost. And I was thinking about it while I was watching those races and the weekend. Martin is certainly a better chaser than he is a leader in terms of championship. I'm talking about every time he gets himself to the top of the championship, builds up a lead, he always finds a way to kind of give it up. So when after the sprint race and he had lost points to Pecco, I still thought, you know what, Martin, it's not the end of the world if you leave the Misano race weekend still behind Pecco. If anything, as the team manager, I would want it that way, because Martin needs that carrot dangled in front of him. If he doesn't have that, he seems to lose his or the pressure gets to him, or he thinks too much about the championship, or something happens. But when he's chasing Pecco, he's a much different kind of personality almost. When he gets into this kind of only in the championship, he does almost get too confident, and that's where these mistakes come in. Pecco, in many ways, we've said it before, I think he can do either. He can lead and he can chase, but there is a mistake in Pecco. There is this mistake, this crash, something in Pecco, which came to the floor again this weekend. But a lot of people, a lot more in favor of, you know, Anaya saying it was a racing incident, move on. A couple like Vampire saying Anaya a little bit too aggressive. So there's definitely two sides to it. A couple of people saying, but the rule says if you run off, Paul Woodward, as he mentions, if you run off, you've got to give up that position. But this is where, again, the rules need to clarify. Anaya did not run onto green paint. And if you look very clearly, Anaya hardly actually ran off the track at all. He runs onto the curb and looks behind, sees he's okay. The fact remains, I think all of this is going to kind of dissolve away when Simon Crayford takes the position next year, because I think it's going to be more clarified. It's going to be more justified from a personality and a person that I think in many ways thinks more like us as fans, but has that racing background to back it up as a racer and. So I think all of these kind of who's wrong or who's right are just going to fall by the wayside. And this was all preempted by 2 years ago stewards just getting too involved. At the end of the day, that's all. Rossi days and that, we didn't even think about these things. You know, Rossi hit Gibana. It was a talking point for 3 hours, and then after that you forgot about it because it was racing. That's what you do on a racetrack. It's a contact sport. And it is a contact sport. Sometimes people forget that. It is a contact sport. So anyway, it is what it is. I was impressed from Enea Bastianini. You know, we've said to him he needs more of that killer instinct. He doesn't bring it out often enough. he what impressed me the most about Enea Bastianini, in a straight fight with Martin, who, as Wayne Taylor says, goes on record more often than not saying, I'm the fastest, in a straight fight. And this is probably what upset Martin more than anything. In a straight fight, Enea Bastianini beat Jorge Martin. So now Bastianini, if he doesn't take that as the biggest confidence pull ever to go forward in this championship, and he's still in this championship, then there's no hope for Nana. And KTM must be rubbing their hands after that weekend, looking at the rider that they've got.
Yeah, Rob, I hope your thinking is right that Martin, I don't know if I agree with you following him being a follower or a leader. I don't know. He's blown it when he's led, but Pecco seems to do that too. So I think I heard Simon say that this was his 6th race crash. Now I'm presuming that's between sprint races and main races, but 6 in a season is quite a high total for someone trying to win the championship. My next trail of thought, and I thought it straight after the incident happened on Sunday. I hope Martin next weekend or this coming weekend, if the situation arises, doesn't think to himself, well, I'll show Bastianini who's boss, and he takes himself out. So I hope this is where we've seen him in the previous years make mistakes, as in choose the wrong tire, do his own thing. I hope for his sake, this weekend and going forward for the last few races, his management sit him down, Gino Boysoy or whoever it is, and say, listen, put that out of your mind. It's gone. It actually doesn't matter, because realistically, you're not racing Bastianini for the championship. You're racing Bagnaia. He was out of it, and then he crashed. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about payback. But Martin, with his, and Wayne Taylor mentioned it, his I-driven ego, and I think you need to be like that, but he's very vocal about it. I hope he doesn't get to sprint race or main race this coming weekend and in a situation against Bastianini with Pecco 1.5 seconds up the road thinks, well, you did it to me, let me show you what I can do, because it could backfire on him. So that's just me, because I worry about his head. We've discussed it. I don't think he's got the calm shoulders that Bagnaia's got, although Bagnaia's been making 1 or 2 mistakes. It doesn't fluster him. He gets a little bit cross, but doesn't fluster him, where I think Martin can get flustered. So that's just my concern, because I'm on the fence as to who I want to win the championship, but I would like to see it go to the last race and we have a good race at Valencia at the end of the year. I prefer it than, Martin now starts doing stupid things, choosing the wrong tire, trying to take Bastianini out, and he ends up losing the championship with 2 rounds to go. So, yeah, that's my thinking for him. I'm a little bit concerned about his hot-headedness.
My biggest concern for Martin is exactly what you've just pointed out. But it's also, I think he's easily influenced by other people. He spends a lot of time with Aleix Espargaro, and I think Aleix Espargaro can sometimes just be that devil on his shoulder saying, no, it wasn't fair. If I don't want to bring it up because it was a talking point that I was going to bring up, that Rossi must just leave this whole Marquez thing now, because
100%.
Hearing him bring up this whole and I was so proud and pleased of Enea Bastianini showed his true quality as a champion, as a person, saying, I don't want to get involved with it. I wasn't racing back then. That they must deal with it. He could have easily sat there and have gone on the VR46 defensive, and he chose not to, which is a big thing. I looked at it as, Jesus, I hope he spoke to Rossi about that before, because I could see Rossi kind of getting upset. But I don't want to bring that up. But if I look at that Rossi incident and how being influenced by outside people cost Rossi that title that year, because after the Phillip Island race, he kind of accepted that I finished 4th. And Andrea Iannone was the person that cost Rossi most in that race.
Yeah.
Pushed Rossi off the podium. It wasn't Marc Marquez. It wasn't Lorenzo. It was Andrea Iannone. Then all of a sudden, they rock up to Sepang, and Rossi's got this different attitude. Now that I've looked at it more times, I see that Marquez was playing with us. That's his team gone to him and gone, right, we're going to struggle to win this on track, Valentino. We've got to, win it off track.
Get in his head.
Then the mind game started, and Mark went, oh, really? Is it? I'll show you mind games. I'll show you games. And then we all know what played out of it. And that's what I fear the most with Martin, is that he's got an Aleix Espargaro, because he sits every night and has supper with him in the motorhome. He spends all his time with him. and he sits there and and Alesia's going, no, 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 no. And this is, with all due respect, this is from an Alessia who's never won a world title. Whereas Pecco has just got that, like you said, he's just able to reset. He gets angry, he gets cross, I'm frustrated, but he resets. I think Martin has got this Alessia and whoever else just, kind of, yeah, you're right. That's not fair. No, yeah, it's not your fault. No, it's not your fault. I just don't think he's got that camp to help him win the championship. Having said that, we've seen glimpses of where there's a champion in Martin. There is, I keep, when he made that mistake 2 weeks ago, I kind of look and I go, that's why I can't confidently say Martin will be world champion. And Pramac. Mistakes like that, the tire choices, there's just something that I can't confidently put money down. I will confidently put money down and say Pecco Bagnaia will be world champion again. I can't with Pecco and with Martin, and that's why. But then there's races like this, like I said, where Pecco makes the mistake and Martin was so good for so long. That whole weekend he was good. He just went out and he did his thing. When Martin goes out and just does his thing and doesn't worry about anyone else or anything, same with the documentary that there can only be one. You see the whole build-up. His plan on that weekend was to disrupt Pecco. Everything was about Pecco. And Pecco said it perfectly. You should stop worrying about what I'm doing and more what he's doing, and he'll be a champion. And what happened? He lost the world championship. What happened? He crashed with Marc Marquez. On the inside, took Marc Marquez out, and down he went. The Martin that's crying wolf now, Martin just needs to focus on Martin, because when he does that, I can see him as a champion. And I've seen it a couple of times that Martin come out where we've seen it this year. He's leading this world championship because he's more consistent than Pecco. Finished in Clark. Because he's found a maturity, he's found a consistency that has put him in that position. But I think it's very easy for him to crack and slip out of it. And that's what he's got to be careful of.
Well, we'll see this weekend, Rob, because I can tell you one thing. Pecco's reset. He's going to, this weekend, his mind has said, I need to finish both races and I need to finish them. I'm going to win. And if not, I need to be on the podium. Martin, I'm just hoping he doesn't go there thinking Bastianini. If you get it, he mustn't even think Bastianini. He mustn't think Marc Marquez, Brad Binder, Pedro Acosta. His only thought must be to finish ahead of or one place behind Bagnaia. If he's serious about winning the world championship, nobody cares if he punts Bagnaia off and he doesn't get a penalty or a double long lap penalty or whatever. Nobody cares if Bagnaia is 5 seconds up the road. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the dynamic plays out this weekend. But I fully agree with you where I think that relationship with Aleix, and I would imagine Aleix has his best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. But as you say, he could be poisoning the chalice from this side, flapping his gums and not giving him the affirmation and the feedback that he actually should be hearing. I don't know. Yeah, time will tell. But I think this weekend will be a big influence on the way the championship continues or goes, depending on Martin's attitude when he comes up against Bastianini, and in all likelihood, it's going to happen.
Paul, before we move on to quickly touching upon Marc Marquez and some of the other rides, I just want to finish on the Martin story. Christy, you're absolutely right. I can watch him pick that bike up on the exits all day long. It's a beautiful sight. As I said, even though there was no real passing involved in the race and then until the last lap, watching those guys go that fast at every corner for that long, I can't keep my eyes off it. Yeah. The pace that they were setting, I mean, Pecco Bagnaia was setting lap record 30.7 or 30.9, and he still wasn't making really any inroads because they were doing 31 dead. Just it's a pure masterclass on how to ride a motorcycle fast. Concentration level, fitness level, they are just superheroes. But one concern, again, taking out of watching the documentary with Martin, seeing some cracks in the armor there, seeing this is, right, let's say Martin doesn't win the championship this year, okay, and he's going to Aprilia. Martin has gone on record this year, and you can see it. Martin rocks up to every race weekend, and he's fast straight out the bat. And that's where this guy is so impressive. He is an impressive specimen when it comes to just going fast. But he said, I rock up to race meetings and we do little fine tweaks on our Ducati. One click here, one click there. There's not really any kind of big thing. Martin's now going to a project next year where it's a blank sheet. And the biggest hurdle for him to overcome is trying to find and how quickly he can find that good base setup where he is just doing tweaks. From what I've seen with Aprilia, that doesn't exist. It's the same problem KTM have. There's no base setting that they can go on that the Ducati seems to have. So as good as Martin is, I think next year will be a big judgment on how good he really is, and if Gigi and them are actually right. Is, you know what, that's fine. We'll let you go. As fast as good as you are, as many races as you've won for us and pole positions, we trust that it's more our bike. Because also watching that documentary, the way he handled himself in that final round with Pecco Bagnaia, where you see Tardozzi also standing there getting cross with the team, and then Martin nearly rode Tardozzi over, and then you can hear them talking, and Tardozzi says, it's very amateur what they're doing. And I think watching that again, that's certainly where Ducati got a bad taste in their mouth over Martin, in the way that they were, the tactics they were using to try and win the championship. Within the Ducati hub, they weren't impressed. Ducati weren't impressed. And once you Ducati's bad books, you're in their bad books. And I think that's what happened with Martin. So I'm very interested to see, and I don't know what people think here. And I'm asking you as well, Paul. Do we see a Martin climbing on this Aprilia and being as competitive as he is on this Ducati? Not straight away, but at some point. Or do we see right now, Martin, now Jorge, you've got to now we're going to see what kind of a test rider you are, what kind of a development rider you are. You climbed on a fast Ducati, and yes, you've contributed to making it better. There's no doubt about that. But now it's a completely different picture being painted. An inconsistent bike that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. An inconsistent project that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Are we going to see the true Martin colors come out?
Yeah, look, make no mistake, he's fast. Two things. Why I think he was so quick to make the signing with Aprilia was Aleix. So obviously, when they spending so much time together, they're discussing the good and the bad points. So I'm sure Aleix said to him, listen, this bike, because they've ridden with each other, they see what's going on the track. Even if it is in qualifying or a practice session, they can see. So I think Aleix said to him, okay, this bike does this, this, and this equally as good as your Ducati. But where it's not as good might be here, here, and here. Because, Rob, I think the Aprilia is a better bike than the results are showing. The first half of the year, that bike was fantastic. It was very competitive. Aleix was on it. Maverick destroyed everyone in the US, which was a once-off, and we know that's Maverick. But you can't do that if the bike's no good. Even if the bike is close, but not. So I think the bike is good. It is inconsistent. There's no doubt about that. But is that due to Aleix and Maverick, or is that due to Aprilia? We're going to find that out. And he's going to get exposed very quickly if it's the bike that is that bad. If the bike is reasonably good, he's as good as anyone out there. So I think he'll exploit the positives of the bike, but can he correct the negatives of the bike? And if he can, how long is it going to take them to sort them out? I don't know. And as you say, is he a developmental rider? We're going to find out very soon, as soon as he gets on that Aprilia, because they're going to be looking to him. As much as they got Bastianini on the bike with him, they're going to be looking to him to say, listen, this is what we need to do. So I mean, Bezzecchi. So let's see what happens with that. I think I don't know. I just keep going back to the first half of the year where the Aprilia was way better than the results they're getting now. We've discussed it. We think it's because Aleix and Maverick have given up. They've kind of shut off, whatever we want to say. So I don't know. He certainly was very positive, he being Jorge Martin. It's going to be interesting to see. But one thing I'll tell you for sure, I don't believe he's going to be a championship runner next year, possibly the year after. But the bike, as good as I think it is, I don't think it's a championship winning bike as a new guy first time out.
I agree with you, and pretty much everyone the same kind of sentiments down here in the comments. James Thompson kind of just agreeing with what we said many weeks ago. Both Aprilia riders checked out this year. No motivation for either due to retirement and team change for Maverick Vinales. And that has been the biggest downfall. If you look at their results, really, since those announcements were made, it's been a downward spiral. Miguel Oliveira switched off as well. Raul Fernandez it just hasn't proved his worth to me in MotoGP. He just, I know he signed on again for them. He really hasn't. I'm excited about Ayagura, to be honest. I really am excited to see him coming to MotoGP and what he can bring in terms of his riding style. And that very excited with that project. Paul, moving on to, we spoke earlier about how this weekend just lacked a bit of spice, it lacked a bit of energy compared to before, and it was pretty much going around, okay, well, going to a new track the following weekend, you kind of know what the result's going to be, but there's a small bit of hope that Brad's going to perform, and who's going to be where. It's different conditions. We kind of knew what the results were going to be. That's why it was. But I also just felt like there was that energy. There was something missing from Marc Marquez. You know what I mean? And Wayne Taylor put it up earlier as well. It just shows you how much influence Marc has. When he's on it, the weekend just has more vibe, and he's chasing down Pecco, and he's on their heels. Marc just didn't seem to be there, personality-wise, the headlines. I had to kind of remind myself, Marc's in fourth. It was very much Pecco, Anaya, and Martin this race weekend. Obviously, from our point of view, Brad. And that's why I had to remind myself, okay, geez, Marc won this race 2 weeks ago, but had the involvement of the rain and the weather and everything else, just couldn't back it up. I think he and we kind of knew that in ideal conditions, which in many ways it was, other than the Michis flying all over the place, the GP23 is just not going to compete with the GP24, and that was made more apparent this weekend. So Marc not really having any kind of involvement also lost a bit of excitement to the race weekend. Having said that, made the best out of a tough weekend. Didn't really set the world on light in qualifying or throughout the weekend, but walked away with a podium in the main race, handed to him by the demise of Pecco Bagnaia. One thing I will say that did upset me, and I'm a big Marc Marquez fan, but he does do these funny things. When he did come out and say Anaya should have got a penalty, and I go, geez, Marc, if anyone should be saying Anaya, pat on the back, Machana, that was a move. That's a Marc Marquez of note move. I don't know what Marc's play with that is. I don't know what Marc's play with coming out and saying that he thinks Anaya should have got a penalty. I don't know. That baffled me a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist in any way. I don't believe it's a Spanish versus Italian thing. I was a bit shocked to hear him say that. I mean, how many penalties would have he got years back? And did he have a chance? Because he made that remark, I think, only after they watched that in the podium room, whatever they call that. Surely which is unlike Marc. Normally he doesn't say too much controversial things. Normally he would keep quiet. If he needs to go watch the video and say, actually, no, that was a racing move. Yeah. So a little bit strange for him. Maybe that was his moment to get a little bit of, because he had by his standards, a non-highlight, non-in-the-limelight type of weekend. But it just shows, going back to him on his race, qualifying is critical. It is just so critical. You can't make mistakes in qualifying. He was better than last weekend. Last weekend, the weather favored him. But last weekend, he said, if the weather doesn't favor me on this track, I'm a 4th, 5th, 6th place rider. Our times don't allow for it. So he's quite a realist when it comes to that. And he was running a consistent 4th. He had got a little bit of a gap on Pedro. He inherited 3rd. He didn't, if Pecco hadn't have crashed, he would never have caught him. So a quiet weekend by his standards. Maybe a bit of a realistic weekend, as in he knew that's the best we were going to get. Let's just bring the bike home. And the fact that he inherited a podium, good for him. But I think this coming weekend we might see a different Marc Marquez, because he likes the track. The weather can be very inclement. Now we're in Asia, and things change there from almost hour to hour. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do think this weekend, Pecco and Martin are going to be, now this is make or break almost.
Yeah, but as we spoke about in the last show, it's also that time now, the away races, you're on the road for a long period of time. Pecco and Martin, you got to think about going fast and winning races, but you also got to think about consolidation. Don't get injured, don't crash. Yeah. Whereas a Marc and Anaya, in some ways, well, we're just going to go for it. Especially Anaya after this. As I said, you won't get a bigger confidence pull than beating Martin at his best, around a track that he was fast at all weekend, and. So, I still think there's so many factors to take into consideration with the mental status, especially Pecco now. That advantage that he had is now gone. Now he's chasing again, and it's a 20-something point gap, and he knows Martin has kind of got a lifeline, so his mentality's changed to, right, don't make any more stupid. So there's so many factors in it, and I think Anaya and Mark are going to be the biggest guys to say, well, if as soon as they drop the ball, we'll be here to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fourth place, Bezzecchi, decent enough ride. Good to see a better performing Marco Bezzecchi, because we haven't seen it often enough. Franco Morbidelli, I wanted to talk about quickly, Paul, before we end. Still not doing it for me. 2 weeks ago was more competitive, sprint race podium, qualified better. This weekend kind of went back to the Frankie of just being in no man's land. I say that, yes, he finished fifth. Again, I think at the demise more of the Brad, Acosta, Pecco. You throw those three in, and he's down in eighth or ninth.
No, eighth or
so
ninth,
Morbidelli still just not doing it for me. There's just something missing from Franco. That's I don't know. We've spoken about it before, and I looked at him this weekend and I went, Jesus, your backyard, your home race, your home fans, GP24. Your teammates dominating, just not doing it for me.
Yeah, he just hasn't had a great year. I think this, and I stand to be corrected, this could be his best result of the year. So hasn't been a great season for him. Yeah, fourth is okay. I mean, it's a fantastic result for anyone. But as you say, home race, he just hasn't seemed like the Marco of old. He struggled with this bike. There's no doubt about that. But it was his choice to stay there. So I think he's really been disappointed. Saying that, it's one of the few times he's beaten his teammate. Yes. But his teammate's got an injury, had a big crash. Whether that hurt, he's got a separated shoulder, which is not a good injury for a motorcycle rider. They've told him he needs to have an operation. I presume, we're talking about De Gianantonio, I presume he's going to roll that till the end of the season, because now what have we got? 6 races in 7 weeks or whatever it is. You can't afford to go, as you said, you can't even afford to go to the toilet. Things happen so fast now. So, I don't know. But just not a great weekend for VR46 in general.
No, it wasn't. Quattararo, shout out to him, 7th overall. Looked
Listen, and he ran out of fuel, which is, that's why. I don't understand why, but still, he was actually having a great race. He was running consistently fast times. He seemed to have found a nice rhythm at a good weekend, and then to have that happen, and he was very positive about it, which I'm sure when it happened, he was spitting mad. But, it happens. I can't understand why, but still. So, I think a good weekend, maybe a bit of an improvement for Yamaha.
Yep.
Which might bode well for the next few races coming up. But as you say, no help from his teammates. So unfortunately, and I mean, illness happens. It happened last weekend for half the Honda team, but still, it's the timing just seems to, if he's not injured, he's sick. So it just seems to be that Rins, he just can't catch a break, the poor guy.
Well, we say well done, Quattraro, and brilliant, but I mean, what is the yardstick? It's himself.
No, 100%.
One Yamaha out there this weekend. It just it baffles me a bit. Honda, Jean Muir in 11th, Marini in 12th. Okay, 33 and 35 seconds off respectively, but slightly better showing there for them, and then the rest of the field. To sum up, I will end off with a comment on World Superbikes, because a lot of people are asking about it, to mention it. But big news. The grid has been sorted for 2025, and I'm sure you're the most excited with the latest news that Jack Miller has signed officially for Pramac Yamaha. So Pramac Yamaha next year is Miller and Oliveira. So Yamaha strengthening, taking 2 Ducatis off the grid, 2 Yamahas on the grid. Everyone, Paul, your thoughts on that? We've spoken about it before.
Yeah, Rob, I've said it. I'm not a fan of Jack Miller. I have absolutely nothing against the guy. He must be whoever his manager is, must be the most convincing. Is it Aki?
Yeah, Aki.
Well, there you go. Because in all fairness, I'm happy to see Ayagura going to Trackhouse Racing. He's going to bring something different. I understand the Yamaha project. They've got 2 factory bikes. It's not like they're putting 2 bikes on the grid that haven't been there at all. They've got info. I just feel, and should they have put Miller on the bike instead of Joe Roberts? I don't know, or Jake Dixon. I'm not debating that point. Or should they have swapped one of those riders with Oliveira? I think you're getting the same amount from both those 2 riders, Miller and Oliveira. Miller said he's got no ride. Now he's got a ride. Was it because it's the only ride offered to him that he grabbed it? Obviously, but there were no. It didn't seem like Yamaha had any other options. They didn't. Did they talk to Joe Roberts? I got no idea. Did they talk to Jake Dixon? Sergio Garcia was mentioned for a very brief moment. I just think that put Jack or Oliveira on the bike, no problem. They've got the experience. Maybe that is an advantage for Pramac. But then throw in a rookie. Like we said with Pedro Acosta going to the gas stroke KTM. Like with Ayagura. It's going to be something different. Someone with no expectations. And see what you learn from that. So I'm happy for Jack. I'm disappointed that they didn't put... I think one of them should have lost their ride. Whether it was Jack or Oliveira, I don't know. Maybe Jack is a better developmental rider because the beginning of last year when he jumped on the KTM, certainly for the first 3 or 4 rounds, the bike was way better. Whether he can do that to Yamaha, I don't know. So maybe he is better than Oliveira, but you've got 2 stagnant riders on the bike. I don't think it's going to improve their project in any way. That's my opinion. I would have liked to have seen one old guy and one rookie to get that different perspective, but obviously that's not happening. And well done to Jack. We're gonna, all the people who like him are going to see him there for another year, running in 16th, 17th, 18th position. I think Marini's happy because it's someone he'll be.
You had to throw that in, didn't you?
Well, he can't win on the KTM. He can't finish in the top 5 where Brad can, and now he's jumping on a Yamaha. Anyway,
no, listen, I agree
hope
with
he proves me wrong.
Yeah, as much as I love Jack, and I think he's a great personality, and that, again, same with Brad, same with Darryn, same with everything. It goes down to statistics and what the paper says, and the paper doesn't make for good reading, more so for Jack than anyone else.
Yeah.
I think particularly now that this announcement of Yamaha going V4 might have played a key role because they both have a lot of experience in terms of V4 engines. And the feeling of V4 engine and stuff compared to certainly a lot of the other names. Look, you could say they dodged the bullet in many ways with Garcia because his failings have come out. And it shows you again that mentality that we've spoken about time and time again. Garcia flying high, then almost rejected as a MotoGP rider. Boom, plummet. The same with Aaron Canet, plummeted. So just shows you how these kind of things affect Yamaha riders in their minds and their performances. So let's wait and see if they do have any kind of improvement to the Yamaha project. Very interesting. Look, going into next year, knowing that Ducati is going to be the bike to beat once again, but there's all these factors like Anea, Maverick into KTM, Yamaha with 2 more bikes, Jack and Oliveira. So there's a lot of things to be positive and be excited about for next year. So so bring it on. We've still got a very exciting this year to kind of conclude. To end off quickly with World Superbikes, and there was a good comment made here by James Thompson. A bit of exciting news. Ryan Vickers, who's a top rider here in BSB, has kind of been touted as one of the next best British riders for a long time. Again, glimpses of that have been shown in many races here in BSB over the years. He's now making the move to World Superbikes in place of Rubens Rinaldi, who I think's run his course in MotoGP, in World Superbikes, I should say. I'm so excited to see another British talent go to World Superbikes, but a big digital round of applause to Daniele Petrucci. The guy's had he's a fan favorite. It's hard it's not hard to not like Daniele Petrucci, but a history maker. One in MotoGP, one in Moto America, won a couple of stages at Dakar, and is now a World Superbike winner. Dominated the weekend, race won, even though he got the 3 grace penalty for showing Remy Gardner, a sign of endearment. dominated the sprint race, dominated race 2. So, and that's against the world best at a level of world superbikes that has never been faster. Okay, Toprak wasn't there, so he took full advantage of that. But a big round of applause to Daniello there. And just on the Toprak, it just shows you an influence at top. And this is why I want to see Toprak in MotoGP. The guy makes a difference, because all of a sudden he's not there. Where's Michael van der Mark?
Yeah.
Where's the BMW? Okay, Garrett Gerloff, hats off to him. He's performed well the last couple of races while Toprak's been out. But just shows you what an impact Toprak as a personality, as a development rider, as a whatever, wherever he goes, he makes things better. So I say take him to MotoGP sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope he's recovering from his injuries, because he had a good weekend for not being there in that. Buliga didn't win all 3 races. So the gap is closed. I think it's down to 22 odd points from 55, but it still gives Toprak, he's the class of the field. So if he can come back whenever their next race is 95% okay, I think he'll win. I'm just going back to that story about Ryan Vickers. Am I right in saying Tommy Bridewell is leading or was leading the British Superbike Championship this year? He raced this weekend. Okay, he's on a Honda. Did you see where he finished? So, to say, this guy's coming from British Superbikes and he's fast. Any regional national championship is good, but move up to world level, and it just moves up a notch. As good as Ryan Vickers is, I'm just using Tommy Bridewell, who has the British Superbike Championship finished.
No. There's Donington and Brands left.
Because he was leading it. So if he isn't leading it now, he's second.
Yeah,
this is the top guy. This is a top guy in British Superbikes. He comes to World Superbikes, and I understand the bike. I don't know if they run different tires, but I mean, I don't think he scored points. So just that puts it into perspective, where Lecchione and Xavi Viejo were running as usual 7, 8, 9, or 10. Just to put it into perspective, as good as British Superbikes is, US Superbikes, you come to world level, you've got to step it up a notch. You have to step it up a notch. I think Bradley Ray was another one from British Superbikes, came to World Superbikes and just couldn't quite step it up as much as you need to. It is a big step. As much as people think it's as good as any national level, it's not. It's World Championship.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And listen, I mean, we saw it with our very own Sheridan Moraes, dominated in South African Superbikes, won in World Supersport 600 level. World Superbikes, is a different kettle of fish. Machinery does play a big role in that. And that's the one thing that I would say on the side of Brad Ray, former British Superbike champion, who's there, as you said, not really showcasing himself as well as we all thought. Taryn McKenzie, another British Superbike champion who went there and struggling a bit. And Tommy Bridewell, the latest. One thing I will say about Tommy Bridewell is I know for a fact he lost the championship lead last time out at Alton Park to Carl Ride in the British Championship. But he took his BSB spec bike, which you're not allowed running electronics, NNN, took it to World Superbikes, had to adapt to the electronics and the teams, which is why I didn't understand why they really did it at a track that he had never been to before either. So it's like, why do you put yourself in that position, taking focus away from your British Superbike Championship? Anyway, it was just a weird situation for me. Right? Why not do it at Donington? Why not doing it at a different situation? It just baffled me a bit.
I just thought the spec from British Superbikes and World Superbikes was almost identical.
No. It's they're not allowed to run any electronics in World Superbikes. So you have no traction control, no wheelie control. They use, they retard the timing and the engine to kind of accommodate that. But it's quite a bit of different spec. I think engine spec and suspension spec engines are also a little bit down to suspension specs exactly the same. They can run same swing arms and stuff as World Superbikes, but electronics I think is the biggest thing. But anyway, they shot themselves in the foot. The track. Anyway, it was a difficult situation, but either way, it was a good showing by Brad Petrucci. He really did well, and I was happy for him.
Absolutely.
And Alvaro Batista showed his worth again. Obviously him and Buliga were looking to take advantage with that Toprak there. But anyway, we need to do a Talking World Superbike show, and I will certainly at the end of the season, because there's only a couple of rounds left there, and we'll do a full catch up on World Superbike, because there's some good talking points there. Wayne Taylor, as you said, unless you're Ben Spies, who kind of came and conquered. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much again to everyone in the comments. Thank you for all your brilliant comments as always, and your points. It's always great hearing the different opinions and seeing the different point of views. It just makes sense of a lot of things and justifies a lot of things. So thank you for tuning in once again. Please like and share this as far and wide as possible. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, share as far and wide as possible. And we won't have to wait long, because this weekend is going to be a bit more of an exciting round, I think, compared to the one that's just passed, because it's all new conditions for everyone. We saw what happened last year with Martin kind of buckling under the pressure and throwing it away at this track. We know that this track can throw up all kinds of curveballs with weather and track conditions. And so anyway, I think it's going to be an exciting weekend of racing, and have a great week further. And we'll chat to you all next week, Tuesday. And Paulie, again, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who tuned in. Yeah, fantastic show again, Rob. Look forward to this weekend, and we'll catch you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Same place.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great